looking for escapism, I just want to escape.
Welcome back to my disembodied voice. The other week, I decided to put myself through Thor Love and Thunder. I had initially decided I wouldn't bother after reading reviews and watching some YouTube video disseminations of the movie, but as my wife loves the Hemsworth, it was inevitable. Now, the last MCU movie I watched was The Multiverse of Blandness, and after 2 hours of furrowed brows, I'd come to the conclusion that I was falling out of love with the MCU, which had once hyped me like a little boy for Infinity War and then Endgame. Truth be told, Infinity War is one of my all-time favourite movies. A masterful setup over multiple movies and 10 years, all culminating with a film which didn't miss a beat, had a brilliant antagonist, and the casting, hype and spectacle all paid off. I enjoyed Endgame, although I admit not as much, but after suffering through the Eternals and Doctor Strange 2, I felt like I'd just had enough. Seriously, each Marvel movie feels like a 2-hour trailer for the next Marvel movie, is hamstrung by some truly woeful identity politics, enforcing messages, and, most of all, both Eternals and Strange 2 were just convoluted and dull. Strange was the worst culprit as, with all the imagination one could muster about the multiverse and the hints of what could come through during No Way Home, the movie was just a mess of poor CGI and, apart from the battle with definitely not Shumagorath, I wondered how much Raimi magic Feige had removed in order to keep things conforming to the sludge of modern-day MCU. For Thor, however, I was at least encouraged by the casting of Christian Bale as the villain Gorr the God Butcher. Now, I'm no Bale fanatic, but I know the man doesn't take projects unless he feels he can do something special with the role. So, whenever Taika Waititi shoved off the MCU production line, at least someone would be giving it their all. Upon seeing Love and Thunder, my feelings were proved right as not only were the awful messaging and equality-thumping pandering all present, but, as I predicted, Gorr was genuinely interesting, chillingly portrayed, and played with everything by Christian Bale. I'm not going to review Love and Thunder as I have no interest in analysing the movie, but I'm just going to focus on Gorr. I want to look at his psychology, what was done right, and, most of all, how the villain contrasted with the protagonist. So, Gorr starts the movie wandering an arid wasteland with his daughter. As the scene unfolds, Gorr's daughter dies, and at the point of his own death from dehydration and starvation, Gorr stumbles into an oasis, cuts himself on a magical sword, and then meets the god who laid waste to his land and refused to spare his daughter. After a few salty words and home truths, the god starts to kill Gorr, but having cut himself on the aforementioned magical sword which can kill gods, he slaughters the god who fails him and then gets consumed by an inky deep vein thrombosis and vows, "All gods will die." Now, I've seen some reviewers complain at Gorr's motivations, but having worked in psychiatric hospitals for many, many years with people who have lost their children, there is no rage more pure or grief more stricken than that of a parent who has to bury their child. So, in terms of motivation, I like everything I see so far and can understand Gorr's thirst for vengeance. However, after that opening scene, the film devolves from that harrowing tone and emergence of impassioned revenge to a comedy which takes nothing seriously and offers spectacle by bombastic noise and an uneven tone. And it's a shame about that, as, if you're wondering why Gorr goes from religious tattooed worshipper to grotesque-looking monster, it's because, apart from the corrupting malignancy of the evil sword, he self-mutilates his tattoos from his body in disgust. Now, this is a kids' film about gods and screaming goats, so I'm not expecting Marvel to show self-mutilation. However, had Gorr had more screen time, we could have explored his conflict of faith, and then we could have explored his justifications against Thor's excesses and his God-given right to cause chaos with the Avengers. This is the problem with the movie's treatment of Gorr. It's that we hardly see him. The god-killing is done off-screen, he appears for a few fights, and apart from a decent scene in the Shadow Realm where he hands Thor his arse and captures Stormbreaker, the movie references him as a big threat without showing the sheer scale of his rage and decimation. Gorr sees the gods as indolent and self-indulgent sloths and slobs who have no love towards the people who worship them. And there is a scene within Zeus's palace where they are planning a feast and an orgy, but that scene serves at nothing but to show Hemsworth's arse and, as per all Marvel movies, set up a character in the post-credits scene for another Marvel movie. Had Gorr appeared at that scene and massacred the gods, had we seen his power and had this forced Thor to revert back to the more noble character we once knew rather than this jocular piss artist, then the character would have been better used and had more reverence in the film. Yes, Zeus states they are frightened of Gorr, but as Thor loses nothing and isn't forced to develop because Gorr killed Zeus or decimated a line of gods, we are just in the familiar MCU movie territory of setting up more MCU movies. It comes back again to the uneven tone of the movie. The problem you have when you give Taika Waititi free rein is that he will do just that, wallow in his own self-indulgence and crapulence whilst nobody stops him from expanding on what worked in Ragnarok and also serving a consistent tone. Also, because Marvel seemingly refuse to build decent villains into stories over time, most Marvel villains are introduced, developed, and then killed in the same movie, creating movies which are overstuffed of short characterization. Gorr should really have been thought of ahead of time and his more human form or race of people given more time in a previous movie. The theme of arrogant gods and civilizations crumbling before the moral turpitude of slobbish oafs eating themselves to gluttonous orgasms whilst collecting nymphs is a wonderful long arc to the Thor character. We even meet Thor as an arrogant god in the first film, but through Jane and the Avengers, he changes and evolves. However, as each film has to have a new villain which serves in a contained story but evolves a longer and more opaque narrative of Marvel sludge, someone like Gorr gets a flash in the pan instead of a long, slow cook. Gorr's grief is driving him and, corrupted by the evil of the MacGuffin sword, he is embarking on a doomed quest. He's a tragic villain with a cursed arc in a comedy film. Marvel has always had issues with the quality of their villains. Perhaps the one which got the most right was Thanos. Hinted at but never indulged in the build-up to Infinity War, we meet Thanos and instantly see how powerful he is as he kills Loki, almost kills Thor, and smacks Hulk down with ease. Then we learn his motives, see his backstory, and understand the conflict which drives him and see the cost of his quest as Ebony Maw dies, he has to sacrifice Gamora, and then even the snap nearly kills him. But such is his philosophy of putting things right, stopping the profligacy of the universe, and setting existence within his one-sided viewpoint, we get evil mixed with moral ambiguity, and this is what makes his quest so divisive and his character so complex. In Infinity War, Thanos even tells Strange that he offered the genocide solution to the leaders of his planet, but they refused. So we have narcissistic rage and a self-serving ego not only following its philosophy, but also doing horrible things because they refuse to be wrong no matter who tells them. For Gorr, we just see a character lose something and then lash out at the god that should have protected him. We see a motive, but this doesn't become a philosophy or viewpoint because we see him do nothing else. Thanos was right. The universe couldn't go on draining more resources than it had. But Thanos is also wrong in committing genocide of over half of life. But seeing his story and seeing how tormented he is by what happened to his world, tied in with the modern anxieties of our own planet in terms of resources and panic over societal collapse and global warming, it creates a natural division inside of us. We agree with the means, but not the method. Or maybe vice versa. Had we seen the decimation across the universe because of Zeus's apathy and self-indulgence, then we see a point in Gorr's methods. But this means he will kill Thor, and if Thor wasn't such a dick and more like the noble Thor of the previous films, then we know we don't want him to die, so Gorr's vision becomes morally conflicted. The gods in Love and Thunder are all the same, painted as gluttonous creatures of a bygone era. Thor doesn't have a philosophy of his own, so Gorr is just an obstacle rather than an overwhelming threat or a moral dilemma. Marvel is now running like a Disney factory of repetitiveness. It's churning out sludge movies which are all the same. Hero has antagonist, film sets up next film, hero defeats antagonist, and nothing really changes. Infinity War enabled Thanos to win, and Endgame forced the Avengers to mess with time travel, and the fight cost Iron Man his life. In Love and Thunder, because Gorr is in the film so little, there is no consequence to anything. Had Gorr killed a god and then a planet collapsed, or wars were breaking out everywhere, then we can see the negative side to what he is doing. We can see the argument of someone who is angry and seeking revenge over the corrupt gods which rule the universe, but then we would also see why Thor has to stop him, and what it will cost him. The other problem in having a mythical wish-giving MacGuffin that Gorr seeks is that it becomes a get-out-of-jail-free card and an overcomplicating farce at the same time. Had Gorr attacked New Asgard and killed all the people there, and then forced Thor to face him, only for Gorr to finally see at that point what he was doing was the same as the god who abandoned him and let his daughter die, then you have a true villain arc. Imagine Gorr begging Thor to kill him because of what he has become and knows he will never stop, only for Thor to refuse. Then, after more catastrophe, god-killing and problems at the end of the movie, Thor kills Gorr because, as a god, he needs to protect the universe from an unstoppable god-killer. Thor's place in the pantheon of the gods is restored, but this comes at a cost to himself. He then sees the needs for the gods to change in a post-Thanos world. Either way, Gorr feels like he belongs in a completely different film. And because Love and Thunder is so tonally inconsistent and more about Taika Waititi wanking his ego off all over the screen, the film misses its opportunity to have Marvel's best villain yet. Gorr was brilliant, complex, dark, twisted. He was everything a great villain should be, and he had a great story, motive, and you could really argue inside your own moral self what he was doing and was it right or wrong. Anyway, that's it for this week, so until next time, I'll catch you later.